Hey everybody, thank you very much for joining me. It's live stream time. Yes, for those of you watching back later on, welcome to you guys too. Before I go any further, I'd obviously just like to say a huge thank you to everyone who's subscribed to this channel and everybody who's supporting this channel by giving me thumbs up, comments, going over to the Patreon page. The link to that obviously is in the description below. Huge thank you to the people who have become subscribers. I'm going to give you a shout out. Actually, I've just got to work out how to do that. And then yeah, so thanks very much to Awesome, Canleyped, Mutant M, and Tweedledum Art. So yeah, thanks to you guys for supporting the channel. Awesome of you to just be awesome. So yeah, in this live stream I'm gonna be working on the expressions. So yeah, let's get on with that then. So I've got the Power Pose tab open, and I've got the facial map open now, just to give you some idea of how to get there. So when you open Power Pose, you'll have this is going to be open. If you hit the plus on the play sign on the face, you get the basic one, and then if you click on that one, that brings up all of the basically all of the hidden bones, and you can actually see those if you go into your character and you go to the head and open up. All of these are normally hidden, so to be able to see them you have to click on this icon here. It's the top icon of this tab. It's not always located here. If you've got like your scene tab over on the other side, obviously then it will be on the opposite side, and then where it says show, you can tick show hidden nodes, and then it will show up basically all of these in the scene tab, and then you can move those around if you want to. So yeah, so feel free to jump in and throw any comments in below if you want to if you want me to cover a specific topic in a live stream or a video. Let me know. So the reason I'm doing this is because when you get expressions from a vendor, they're usually designed for a specific character, because everyone has different facial muscle structure, which means that you an expression designed for one character might look a bit weird for another one, which isn't ideal when you're trying to obviously create photorealistic pictures, because obviously stupid looking expressions are gonna knacker your whole render. So what we're going to do is we're going to be building some custom expressions for Lucy, who is a character in one of my games, and so that when we do some renders with her, then it's just going to look a bit more natural. Essentially, that's really what it boils down to. So the first thing we want to do is get your character, get your model into the neutral position, and then you can go into your content library, and I've created a folder here, and you would just go to File, Save As, Pose Preset, select your, I've already created a 0, but you just call it 0, call it whatever you want, say yes obviously in my case, and then what you want to do is you want to untick all of that, and you're just saving, because it's an expression, you're really just saving it for the head, so you need to open up all the way down the tree, neck lower, neck upper, and then select head, so that it's only selecting the head and then the child nodes to the head, and then you'll just hit accept, and then that's going to save all of the positions of those nodes. So now we've got our 0 expression. So when we come back into Power Pose, if we were to mess around with it a little bit, just give it like a wacky kind of thing. And then when we come back into our content library, wherever we've saved our pose, we can just double click on that zero pose that we've created. And after a few seconds, probably more than a few seconds if we're being honest, because Daz likes to randomly hang when doing very basic things, but after a brief period of time it will reset back to the zero pose that we've created. So just like last time on all live streams, if you've got any questions or anything like that you want to ask, then just feel free. As you can see there, she's jumped in, it's reset, so happy day. So we got our zero pose sorted, our zero expression, sorry. So I've got off screen, I've got some stock photos of various different expressions that it's a good way of it's good to have reference material so that you're not going completely blind. I mean, you know, creating, if you didn't know what you're doing, you just say, oh, I just want to create a smile, so you just drag up the corners of her mouth and drag it up, which is, you know, okay, yes, you are going to get a bit of a smile, but you kind of want, you know, you need more than that. When people smile, they don't just smile with their mouths, they smile with their eyes. It's so yeah, you need the reference materials. So if you're going to do this yourself, then just kind of make sure that you've got some pictures to work from. Yeah, definitely. So I'm just gonna check the chat to make sure that so yeah, feel free to say hello if you're here. For what it's worth, I will say hello back. Sorry, brief pause because there's a delay. So I just need to close that down again so that I can't hear myself 10 seconds later in my own ear. That would confuse me considerably. Alright, cool. So I've got my reference material using a kind of in-depth power pose controls, and we're just going to start off with something really simple. So we've already kind of tilted the corners of our mouth up a little bit, so we might as well go with the a smile to start with. And obviously if we wanted to, we could pop this into eye mode as well, just to give us a slightly kind of better idea of what the expression actually looks like. It's going to look a bit alien-like because yeah, materials and stuff. So I'm going to jump back into texture shaded mode for this one. There we go. So yeah, a smile. Remember, the smile isn't just the corner of the mouth, it's kind of like the whole mouth that needs to be. I'm going to actually look at my reference materials and get the smile out. And you could go with a toothy smile, I suppose. I think the key thing to remember when you're doing expressions is you really got to be subtle, because you get so many of these expressions that you buy off of the Daz store and they're really exaggerated, which might work for kind of character, you know, like caricature style pictures, but to me subtlety is more important. You know, yeah, if you're really laughing your ass off, you're going to get a big toothy smile, but a lot of the time that's really not the case. So just try not to over exaggerate anything here, really. Welcome to everybody who's just joined in the watching this stream. Just so you're not playing catch up, we're just playing with custom expressions for Lucy character, so that we can apply them to just want it to be more natural expressions for when we're using this character. As you can see, I've got a camera set up that's a good distance away from her and zoomed right in so that we don't get that distortion, which you can see if you jump into the perspective view. You can see how much distortion is caused by being up close. So it's kind of jarring when you jump between the two, really. But so when people smile, the cheeks might come out. This is going to take a little bit of fine tuning, a little bit of tweaking here and there to kind of make sure that everything is bang on. I'm just wondering if that might be better served going in a bit. And these are going to have to come. Oh no, that looks weird. That looks very weird. Yeah, we don't need that. So you've got these kind of folds around the sides there. Go into perspective view again and have a look at what we've done to make sure we haven't made it look completely mad. It doesn't actually look too bad, all things considered. And you've got all of these, all this choice of bones to play with. It's you know, pretty cool. I'm just playing at this for the moment, just sort of having a bit of an experiment and jump back and forward from our cameras just to see what's going on. I don't want to make her look too gaunt. How's it going, man? Good to see you. As you can see, we're just having a bit of a play with the power pose, trying to get some more natural looking expressions for specific character. And as I was saying before, it's kind of, if you're going to get really into developing a game or developing custom characters, it's good to create poses for your character, specifically for your character, so that when you are when you're using that character, you're not having to use yeah, man, lucky break. So yeah, using expressions that you buy from vendors on the store, it's a good place to start. But if you really want to kind of start taking your characters seriously, you need to sort of create poses and expressions for their specific facial structure, so that you don't get some wacky looking stuff going down. Oh, silly me, I unselected her. That'll teach me. The reason I've got selecting her turned off is because otherwise when you drag the mouse over it, you get all those highlights and it's just annoying. So at least this way, because I'm playing with the power pose interface, I don't really need to touch the model itself, so I can see as close to the finished product as possible. You know, it's a pretty cool tool. I mean, it's you know, you don't have to go right down into the, you know, the bare, you know, the tiny little bones. You can play with everything on the power pose and get more or less the results you want without having to go into ZBrush or anything like that. Hey Sean, how you doing, man? Yeah, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, man. You're just getting on. Just having a bit of a play with power pose, just making some custom expressions. I mean, yeah, you could definitely use, you know, custom, not custom, poses that you buy from the vendors and kind of tweak them. Absolutely. I just like to have a bit of a play with this and see if we can't get some good expressions. Right, I shouldn't probably have done that, but I'm going to jump into iRay. See, it looks a lot different once you actually render it into iRay mode. Yeah, we like to experiment. The last video was animation. We had a bit of fun playing around with animations. Didn't get a great deal achieved in the sort of grand scheme of things, but it's always good to experiment. I think, like I was saying before, and this is something that I do when I'm taking pictures as well, it's important to just remember that subtlety, you know, less is sometimes more. Most people, they don't walk around with big cheesy grins on their face. So when people smile, generally speaking, it's kind of more subtle than that, unless they are actually kind of overacting or whatever. So I just like to kind of simplify things down a little bit. And I've got hair on the model as well, so if I want to see what she's gonna kind of look like, I can chuck that into iRay mode. Just ignore the weird ass patterns on her forehead. That's because I'm playing with the yeah. So she looks kind of, maybe if I get a little bit further away. So this is quite a subtle kind of, I'd say this is more of a contented. The mouth looks a bit weird. Those folds are kind of creating some weird shadows, which I don't like. So I think we're going to have to fix that. I think it was this one I was playing with, yeah. So we'll straighten those out a little bit, get rid of that wacky crease there. Do a bit of rotating as well, just to see if we can't. I mean, you know, you've got to give. We mock. I joke about the Dash Studio guys sometimes, but you've got to give them credit. This is a remarkably powerful bit of kit. This. This is why it's really important to have some reference materials, you know, so that you can you know, it's handy to just be able to have something as a quick reference as well. On my other screen I've got, you know, various expressions. If I'm actually looking at a smile, it might help. I'm looking for a subtle smile. interesting to see. Now I've obviously made some changes on one side. I need to make the same kind of changes roughly on the other as well. I think that's going to look a bit weird. It doesn't have to be perfect because faces are asymmetrical. I may have to change the render settings so that we get better light, because at the moment it's kind of shining from... it's not too bad. It doesn't look like she's smiling that much. It's probably a bit too subtle, so maybe... See, in texture shaded it looks a lot more like she's smiling. That makes that look a little bit more natural. No worries, bro. I find it all that kind of stuff, I think it's really important for people to know how easy it is to make all that kind of stuff, because it frustrates me to not a lot, but it frustrates me a little bit that there are guys out there making money from literally just selling these things. Literally someone's just created a bunch of spheres, given them emissive properties, made them invisible, packaged it up, and then is selling it on the Daz Studio store for $20. That's just crazy to me. Like I've been saying in various videos, I think we want to be rewarding the guys who are actually doing some work, not the guys who are just opportunists. People who are charging to teach you how to make HDRIs, or charging to teach you how to do really basic stuff just because the Daz Studio documentation is so bad, and that just drives me crazy. So it's why I'm here. Yeah, man, we've all been there. I've spent money on stuff from the Daz Studio store as well. To be fair, I learned a lot of the things I've learned about Daz Studio. I've learned by reverse engineering things that either I or someone else has bought from the Daz store. I've probably bought more terrible characters than anyone else in the world. Like, I've bought so many characters and learned, the hard way about vendors not creating textures properly, or having really badly kind of boned. I've had to rebone a couple of characters, and that was frustrating as hell. The thing is with the Daz Studio store is when you buy something from there, it should be ready to go out of the box. You shouldn't have to muck around with, reskinning or reboning or giving them new eye materials or anything like that. It should be, you should just be able to load it into your scene, pose it, render it, boom. And there are so many products on the Daz Studio store that require extra faffing around. It's crazy, So let's give her a little bit of a squint, because people do smile with their eyes, don't they? I think I might have gone a bit over the top there. I think I'm starting to make her look like an old woman. Let's have a look. It's kind of hard to tell from that view, so let's just skip into this view. Yeah, so far so good. She looks a little bit happier. There we go. I need to do a hotkey to jump between NVIDIA iRay mode and texture shaded mode, really. Oh god, no. We don't want to do that. That just looks weird. What else do people do when they smile? They squint a little bit, don't they? So like the bottom outer edge of the eye sort of closes up a little bit. They call it smizing. But again, subtlety is key in this one. If you go too mad, you end up just giving someone a complete face job. We don't need to do that. Yeah, we've played a little bit with that. We've sucked her cheeks in. I think that's going to take a little bit of fine tuning, because obviously if we go too far it's going to look kind of wacky. So I think that's pretty good. Let's have a looky. I think she looks pretty much like, you know, subtle smile. I'm quite happy that that's pretty good. Let me jump back. She looks a bit more sad when you do it in perspective mode because of the distortions to the face. I kind of got to be careful. I don't want to go too far back because she's not got any clothes on. I think what I probably should have done is given her some clothes, but never mind. She looks pretty sort of that, yeah. So I'm going to save that as kind of like a really subtle. Right, that was silly. I'm trying to save it as a scene. We need to do save as, pose, preset. Yep, you have to select the figure, dummy. I'm just going to call this one something like very subtle. And then we have to make sure that we've only got the bones that we want. And the head. Yeah, I suppose I probably would be fine, yeah. Right, so we've got the head selected. We're just going to hit accept. And it's that quick. And now, I say it's that quick, it's having a bit of a brain fart now. It does need to have a bit of a think. I did actually send an email to the Dash Studio technical support team, like asking some questions about stuff, so that I can kind of share some info with you guys as well, because I want to know. One of my main questions to them was, what in the blue hell is Daz actually doing when it does hang up like this? Because, like for example, when you clear the scene, when you restore a figure pose, those are all really basic operations that shouldn't take a great deal of thinking, you know, by my reckoning anyway. So I sent them an email kind of asking, look, what's going on here? Well, how is it that, you know, if you've got sometimes it's not even a particularly complicated scene, and you hit restore figure pose and it'll hang for you know, it can hang up for, even on mine. I use an i9 with 32 gig of RAM and a 1070 Ti. Not the most powerful PC in the world, but it should be more than capable of restoring a figure pose, you know. So hopefully they'll give me an answer back. I don't know what's just happened. I just got a ding in my ear. You guys probably got a notification. I didn't. The beauty of using Streamlabs OBS, I suppose. Yeah, man, you've got, you know, the two RTX 2080s and you still get that hang, so it's clearly not a graphics card issue. It must be It must be something else. Must be. And yeah, to me that just it doesn't add up. So I'm hoping that they will give me some kind of answer that I can at least share the info with you guys. So yeah, I'll keep you updated on that. I'll post it on the Patreon or on the Twitter. And yeah, we'll see what happens there. Sorry, I'm not completely ignoring the Studio page for a second there, because I was just trying to work out. I got a ping in my ear from the stream doing something, and oh, okay. Hey Clem, I'm not sure why KL1M. I don't want to mispronounce it if that's what it's meant to say. Apologies for it taking me 5 minutes to respond to your question. It's Daz Studio. This is it's using Power Pose, and yeah, this is just a custom character that I have in one of my games. So I'm just trying to create some cool expressions for her. I'm just trying to work out why the Picato chat didn't come up in the Restream chat. That's very odd. Oh well, I just have to make sure I'm looking at both. Welcome anyway. Yeah, so I don't know if it's a bug or if it's just not very well optimized or anything. I mean, they're on version 4.12 now, so you know, and it is supposedly no, it's all good, man. Honestly, I'm always glad to chat. So right, we've got that expression now. I'm gonna quickly. So we've got 0 and we've got subtle smile. There is a subtle difference, so hopefully if I just double click on it, it won't go. It's not going to hang for 10 minutes in between expressions, so we should be able to see the subtle difference between the two. Eventually. Hey David, where did the feet go? There you go. You can see the difference in the two expressions. No, this is something different, man. We're I will go back to doing the animation probably in another live stream. For this one, I'm just taking the the Lucy character and creating some custom expressions for her, just so that the expressions look a bit more like they were intended for her and not for the Joker or something like that. I've got literally hundreds of expressions, you know, that I've bought from the store, and sometimes just too many. Yeah. What was it we called it? The porn perv nerds, something like that. Alright, so I'm going to try a different expression now. I'm thinking, I don't know, so many moods to capture. The digital perv nerds or something like that, yeah. Alright, let's see. Let's play a game while we're here. Let's see if you can figure out what expression it is that I'm trying to recreate. I'll probably forget that we're playing in about 2 minutes and blurt it out anyway, but... There's going to be a weird ass rumour started about me. I can feel it coming off the back of one of these live streams. The people's eyebrow, yeah. I may have to do one of those just for fun. Maybe I'll give Jake the people's eyebrow. Confused about pooping. It's entirely a possibility. It's not what I was going for, but... Right, okay, so it turns out that you have to... For some reason the controls for lips are inverted, which that's rather irritating. Confused about pooping pose. Yeah, I'm very grateful for you guys for spending your Saturday night watching me tweak a facial expression. It's not a traditional Saturday night entertainment. I think I may have just screwed it up royally, so I think I might have to Control Z a couple of times. Right, let's go back to that one. I think I'm going to roll her lips in a little bit. Yeah. It's amazing how quickly your frame rate drops when you're rendering. When you're, you can go from having one character in a scene where you can literally be in perspective view and, like frame rate, wacky frame rate crazy, and then put one other character in the scene and suddenly you can have a cup of tea between frames. It's mad. Imagine if like Blender and Maya worked that slowly. I know that Daz is doing a lot more. The park. I think I know the one you mean. I think it's just because the sheer amount of geometry in it, because it's got like individual blades of grass and individual leaves on trees and stuff. I think that's the one, and because it's the one with the bench and the little kind of metal fence alongside the pathway, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's just the sheer amount of geometry that's in there that causes it to slow down. I'm not sure. I mean, you could try using the optimization scripts. Yeah, but you say that, but Blender and Maya and 3ds, they all can do exactly the same stuff that Daz can do. I just think when you're doing it in Blender or in Maya, you kind of, I think when you're doing it in those programs, you kind of switching between modes, and it just seems to be a lot more seamless. Whereas when you're in Daz, it just isn't very well optimized, not by comparison. The only reason is, I think the reason most of us use Daz is because it makes it more accessible, you know. And I think that's the price we have to pay. We just have to handle the fact that it doesn't do as good a job at anything because it is a jack of all trades and master of none. But it makes it a lot more accessible. I know for a fact that I certainly wouldn't be able to create a character like Lucy in Blender or Maya because I just don't have the patience to do it, you know, to create one of these characters vertex by vertex. I'd much rather start with a Genesis 8 basic female, which is what I did, and then tweak using ZBrush and morph sliders to get the character that I wanted, and then find a character whose textures I liked. So that you're getting, I don't want to say a custom character because that's kind of something that a lot of adult devs say, oh, it's a custom character, and all they've done is they've taken one, character that they've bought off a vendor and then tweaked a couple of morph sliders, and then it's a custom character. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Custom character is built from the ground up, you know. I can create sexy blobs and yes, small, that's a win. Sexy blobs. Alright, I've completely forgotten what expression I was doing now. Oh yeah, I remember. No, we don't want it to be puckered. I keep forgetting the lip controls for some inexplicable reason are back to front. Bit too much. Just want the mouth to be slightly open. Okay. So these squint muscles up a bit in there. So you've all gone quiet after the mention of sexy blobs. You're all looking at spheres with nipples on them now, aren't you? Right, that's yeah. Right, so I finished this expression while you were all talking about spherical boobs, and no one's guessed what it was. So either I'm doing a terrible job, or you're all looking at Google. Well, you know, people are turned on by balloons for some reason. I don't know if it's like another one of those fetishes that I can't get my head around, no pun intended, but... So, you know, blobophilia might be a thing. Right, let me just check I've got the whole character selected and not one part yet. Distant curiosity. Well, if I render it, it looks a bit closer to what it's supposed to look like. Oh man, what the hell is farting porn about? Yeah, that, again, that's just poor optimization, I mean. This, you know, if someone like you who's got a really high-end rig is, there you go, mild sadness, well done, David. Burritos, I'm not sure that's a mood, Sean, but thank you for playing. Yeah, it just seems like such poor optimization in the, given how limited the scene is, because you've only got, probably like, maybe I need to tweak under her eye a bit. Her right eye is a little bit less. It looks a bit weird. That one. Yeah, just need to flatten that off a little bit more. Oh, I think you're talking about something very different. I do apologise. Burrito porn, yeah. Oh, I've got to make sure I've got the whole figure selected again. Don't want to fluff it up. I mean, to be fair, I could literally spend 2 hours just completely winging it, making random changes to the face, and then seeing roughly what it looks like in NVIDIA. You could probably, I mean, to be fair, that's probably not a bad way of spending an evening, just sitting and tweaking facial expressions and saving them. What am I doing? Neck lower, neck upper, head. Can anyone remember what I saved that as? I think I said mildly sad. Yeah, sorry, that's what I was getting to, yeah. Fart porn, what in God's name is that all about? I mean, I suppose it involves buttholes, but someone ejecting gaseous poop molecules doesn't really kind of flip my switch. Yeah, just research though, eh, Sean? It's important to know these things, you know. Right, so this is something else that I don't get, is why when you go into the content library you have to click off a folder and back onto it to see the contents. Well, that's true. That is very true. Here we go, hanging again. What it's got to do is move a few sliders. I really do hope they get back to me on kind of... It's not like I feel like they owe me an explanation or anything, but it'd be nice to know so that I can share the info with you guys as to why Daz does this whenever you do certain operations. It's quite frustrating. Let's do something a little bit more animated. But what? That's not the right tab. Shakedown. Can't be any worse than Patreon's community team. Good God. I don't want to do that whole generational thing, but I've never known a company that... Sleep with the Genesis 2 fishes. Patreon's team, if you're basically telling them anything they don't want to hear, they just completely ignore you. I've never known anything like it. I can see some weird light forming here on the forehead, so I may need to check that I haven't made some kind of weird looking mutant. It's not as bad as I thought it was. Squeeze brow. It's more of a concerned face than I was anticipating it was going to look, so strange. Oh, here's an interesting tip for you guys. You've probably all already figured this out by now, but actually, do you know what? I'm going to turn off show hidden nodes because I don't need them up really. I'm playing with power pose, but if you get into one of those situations where I've been in there before, where you're using vendor poses, and for some reason they provide you a zero pose that doesn't actually zero the expression, so when you apply another expression it adds the two together, so you end up with some really weird stuff going on. So if you get into that situation where Daz won't reset an expression by applying a zero pose, the new expression you're trying to apply just adds on top of it. So click on the head like this and just do restore selected items pose, and then it'll hang for about 10 minutes, have a bit of a think, kill a couple of goats, and then will eventually reset the pose back to complete default, but for the head only, so it won't knacker the rest of your pose. Useful tip. As I say, you guys probably already figured that out though. Yeah, it's weird how some poses do it. I think it's because some vendors, they do like morph expressions, where they're not just playing with sliders, they're doing like applying morphs and stuff as well. Yeah. Yeah. I do sometimes wonder if the people who've made some of these poses have actually met any human people. Because some of them are just weird. Okay, like Sod's Law is not doing it. But yeah, anyway, moving on. Luckily I created a zero pose because I are genius. Yeah. I kind of get why some poses and some expressions are exaggerated, because if you're trying to tell a story with pictures, sometimes you need to exaggerate. It's kind of like the whole comic book thing, isn't it? You're trying to tell not an instant, but you're trying to tell like a whole sequence of events with one image. Sometimes exaggerating the facial poses and stuff is the best way to do that, but in the case of like a visual novel, when you're doing like a visual novel, the person's played the game from the start, assuming that they haven't taken the idiot route and just followed a walkthrough and they've actually paid attention to the story. They shouldn't need a really hyper exaggerated pose to work out what mood the person's in, you know. They should feel some kind of connection with that character so that they can interpret that person's emotions. So I'm getting a bit too deep there. You are talking about donkey blowjobs or something, and here's me talking about character engagement. Yeah, man. Nuance, that's the word. Right, I don't know if anyone's actually watching on Picato anymore. I don't know if the one viewer that it's showing is me. That's actually why I named the game Deeper. What? Because I got so fed up with playing adult games that were just... You know, you play a porn game, you don't expect to have to spend hours grinding to get any sex scenes or anything like that, of course. But I got so fed up with the cliches that were crammed in. There's a fine line between... I don't know how... I'm not communicating what I'm trying to get across very well at the moment, but... yeah, a little bit of build up, because if it's all carrot and there's no stick, you get spoiled and you don't enjoy the carrot as much. If you have to work to get there, and by work I mean you have to apply some intelligence and some effort, like you're not just clicking. Yeah, like for prime example, right? Don't take this as me trying to compare my games with it, but Final Fantasy VII was a horrible game, graphically speaking. I mean, even for its time, the graphics were terrible. Like, the backgrounds were amazing. They were all done on the Silicon Graphics machines, but the actual characters themselves looked awful. Even in the fight scenes and the CGI scenes, they, you know, even for their time, they were dated. But by the time you actually got to the point where anything interesting was happening, you'd already developed a connection with your characters to the point where you really gave a shit whether Aerith was going to die or whether, you know, you cared. And yeah, so that's kind of how, you know, it's a lesson that we can all learn as game developers, is to, you know, focus on, yeah, man, like when Aerith died, it's the same as in Final Fantasy X. I mean, that game towards the end, I still can't listen to that Tazanakan song without getting a lump in my throat. And I'm not saying that every porn game has to be that deep and that engaging. You know, sometimes people just want to look at some CGI boobs and have a wank. That's fine, that's up to them. But for me, the gameplay is as much of a part of it, because like when you play a game where you have to put some work in, it just makes the reward all that much better. And before anyone starts, Deeper is a long way away from that. You know, it's going to take me probably a couple of years to get Deeper to a state where I'm happy that it's kind of playable. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I didn't know you were an author. That's cool, man. See the creative blood's flowing through your veins. But yeah, like adult content, the storylines are always so clear, and it's because I think it's just lack of imagination. There's a lot of devs out there who are perfectly capable of thinking up interesting sex scene ideas, but they don't have the imagination, or maybe they're just not trying hard enough to go from the start to the sex scene. So they just kind of skip all of the content and they just go straight for the sex scene, which is just dull. For me, anyway, I don't enjoy it. I prefer to actually, yeah. So you're probably a little bit more familiar with the kind of the terminology and all that. I'm not an author. I just, I write stories for my games and stuff. But I'm sure that there's a much more technical art to it and all that sort of thing. And that's kind of why I went the route that I went in. And some people have said that Deeper is quite a dark game, and initially it is because you're starting off in a really bad situation. And you have to work your way out of it, and I'm trying desperately to kind of create the atmosphere of struggle in the first kind of period of the game. And a lot of people have said, oh well, there's a lot of grind and all that sort of thing, but that's kind of the point. Is yeah, you get the visual stimulation from it, but there's no emotional stimulation. So you just, I'm pretty sure, we all do it. Like, guys, come on, let's be realistic. You guys, when you're looking at, back in, I don't know how old most of you are. I'm making the assumption that most of you are not too far from me in age gap, but before the internet was really a big thing, when you wanted to see boobs, you had to look at them in magazines, and you would kind of do role playing in your head. You'd create a little scenario. You wouldn't just be looking at boobs and tapping one out. You'd be creating a little kind of event in your head. Deeper. Yeah, so yeah, we're all more or less the same kind of age group. Well, you two are anyway. Deeper, you can follow Deeper's progress on the Subscribestar page. I can't talk about it on Patreon because Deeper's banned from Patreon, so I kind of have to be a little bit careful. But yeah, it's subscribestar.adult /Thundawn-games, and then I post updates on there as to kind of progress. Someone very recently leaked the subscriber only version. This is the thing, right? Deeper was never meant to be an incest game. It was never really meant to be a porn game either. It's a game aimed at adults, and it does tackle adult themes. It is on the F95 forums, the latest version, but it's really not playable. I was more miffed about the fact that it was released because it's just not in a state where I would consider it to be playable. So people are going to play it for the first time potentially, and just it's in such a, there's just not enough content in it, and there's still a few bugs. So yeah, but yeah, it was never meant to be a porn game. It's never meant to be an incest game. It's a game aimed at adults that tackles adult themes. But there's kind of, you make decisions throughout the game, and yes, there is a kind of number of decisions that you can make that will end up in exploring the Oedipus complex theme. But you got to remember, Jake is a teenager. Obviously, you have to make him over 18 in order for the game to be legal. But he is a young 18-year-old who's still exploring his sexuality and exploring all of that teenage angst. And so it's kind of an exploration of sexuality as a general rule. I mean, that's why Laura's there, because, you know, teenage boys, they get curious about all sorts of things. I mean, it'll all make a lot more sense when I get the game into a state where it's kind of not near completion, because that's going to take God knows how long, but you know, when it gets to a point where you can play the storyline through for a little bit, because there's so many kind of twists and turns and there's so many different characters to interact with. It's I've had to kind of take a step back and just work on one storyline at a time. So at the moment I'm working on Sarah's storyline. I'm just going to kind of get that to a certain stage, and then I'll stop and work on something else to kind of just bring more content to it. There's only so many kind of activities that you can give the main character to do. It's Ren'Py, doing it in Ren'Py. Well, it's a bastardized version of Ren'Py, I should say, because I'm making an awful lot of kind of Pythonic adjustments to it to kind of shoehorn the game into it, really. MD is a very, very, very cool program. You know, it has introduced a whole new level to the game, isn't it? I've never even played with it. I've heard about it. There's been a few very popular games that were started off in Tirana Builder. I think they eventually switched over to Unity, which makes no sense to me, because I think Unity is such a huge system for making a visual novel. It's a bit like hitting a nail with a sledgehammer. Ren'Py is yeah. I mean, Ren'Py is a engine specifically designed for visual novels. So if you just wanted to create a VN, then it's ideal. Obviously, you can, if you watch my Ren'Py tutorials, you can see you can kind of create other kind of games with it. It just requires a little bit of Python know-how. I mean, I have toyed with the idea of when Deeper's finished and when Hopeless Infatuation is finished, kind of playing around and trying to do something with Unity, only because Unity, for all of the times I've said it's too big of a system to build a VN in, the one thing that it does have on its side is it's a lot harder. Well, it's not a lot harder, but it is a bit harder to crack. A bit harder to, you know, Ren'Py, any idiot can hack your game and just cheat. And, you know, as a dev, I kind of don't care about people cheating, but at the same time I kind of do, if that makes any sense. Yeah, C# is an easy enough language, because I learned it when XNA 3.0 was still a thing. You know, using Visual Studio, and it was XNA Game Studio, but it was basically just a C# engine. But I still struggle a little bit with Unity and how the code integrates with it. If you write a script and kind of combining it to, it's still a little bit hazy in my head how the system works. So I'd have to do a lot of tutorials on how to kind of get all of that squared away. Yeah, exactly. You know, if some people want to put an instant cache cheat code and buy all of the big stuff and just skip to the end, that's up to them. They're sort of spoiling their own experience, in my kind of opinion. But at the same time, it's up to them if that's what they want to do. The only time I get agitated by it is when people go onto like the F95 forums or even on the Discord and they start posting CG rips, and things like that in places where you could really class it as a spoiler. Because some people do want to play the game and not have all of that stuff spoiled for them. To be fair, like I'm going to talk about another dev now and another person's game, and I try not to because I don't want to badmouth someone else's work or whatever. But I was playing Timestamps, and I enjoyed his art style very much. And when it first came out, I was really looking forward to having a kind of a good build-up experience, of having, because the storyline initially seemed to be quite cool, but then the second update, I think it was the second update, he shoehorned in a sex scene with the mother character, and it kind of spoiled it for me because it was like, you just suddenly, it's like someone just said all of that hard work that you were looking forward to putting in amounted to nothing because he just suddenly, here's boobs, here's what she looks like with no clothes on. You're like, oh right, okay, cheers. Spoiled it now. And that's just a personal preference thing. I'm not obviously having a pop at him or anything like that. That's just, it kind of spoiled it for me, from my experience. Right, I'm going to start tweaking. You carry on chatting away. I'm going to try and create another expression here because I've been talking for like 20 minutes and done absolutely no work. Right, this is going to be interesting. I was going to... Okay, so we can do that. I don't think it's going to take you long to figure out which expression this is supposed to be. Yeah. Oh yeah, man. My game, both my games get trashed constantly for exactly that. People going, oh, there's no sex in it. There's no sex in it. I'm sorry, but I'm just not gonna throw a load of sex into the game straight away just because people are impatient. I'm not building my game by consensus. I'm building it. It's my game. I'm doing it how I want to do it. Those guys can bitch and whine all they want, but oh Christ, I've given away the elephant man nose. But it's just not going to happen, When it comes, it's going to come, no pun intended. I mean, it's not winning me any prizes for the number of patrons I've got, but I'm going to stick to my guns, It's my game. I think I've played that. I can't honestly remember. I don't take that as a reflection on the storyline. I can't remember it, but bear in mind I play a lot of games for kind of research purposes. That sounded a bit dodgy, but you know what I mean. A lot of games get away with not having any content by having kind of like side characters that, like, Sisterly Lust is one that Sisterly Lust is one of those games that you've got like 2 or 3 side characters that basically throw themselves at the main character from moment one, so that you've got some kind of content for those people who are impatient. Yeah. The game itself and the characters are forgettable. Every dev's dream of hearing that statement. Having said that, I've heard an awful lot worse about my games. It's a tricky thing. You don't really analyse how people pull their faces until you're trying to. Jesus. It looked alright until you put it in this view, and then you suddenly think, Christ, what is that expression supposed to be? Not entirely sure. If in doubt, start from scratch. It's a step in the right direction, I think. I think it's a fine balance, isn't it? Yeah, stepped on attack. Yeah, it's a fine balance, I think, because it's one of the things that I always say is, just because you've been doing something for a long time doesn't mean you've been doing it right. And I think part of another interpretation of that could be that just because something's long doesn't mean it's epic. You know, like you get these Hollywood movies that are 3 hours long, and Freegal happens. There was a Henry Cavill film. I can't actually remember what it was called. That's how memorable it was. And that was like 3 hours long, and it was typically set in like ancient Greek times or something. And just because it was 3 hours long, they were calling it like a Hollywood epic, and it was just like, well, it wasn't that epic because I can't bloody remember it. So yeah, you've got to have engaging content. And that's the reason why like the Final Fantasy games were so emotionally engaging, is because you got to know the characters, you know, you got to know them inside and out because of all of the mundane conversations that were going on. You got to know their personalities. Epically forgettable, yeah. Right. Do you know what? I don't remember if I spoke about it last stream or not, but I've been trying to get Genesis 8 characters into Source Filmmaker, and I have had absolutely no luck whatsoever. Like, you go on the Steam forums and you ask, and someone just sends you to a guide that's out of date and doesn't work, and it's like 12 pages long. I find it baffling. Yeah, I did talk about this last week, because I remember saying I couldn't work out why they'd made it deliberately so difficult to import things from other software into it. I mean, they want people to use the software, that's great, but if you make the software so difficult to use that no one does it, it seems to be a bit pointless. But some of the animations that I've seen people do in SFM have been absolutely mind-blowing. Turbulent Juice, where is that from? I can remember that from somewhere. I don't even get to the point. Like, I've tried to well, I'm trying to remember what happened last time I tried to do it. I get it's in the Blender bit that things get confusing, because you can export like an FBX from Dash Studio. That's easy. And then you put it into Blender. And because I'm so unfamiliar with the Blender interface, I keep forgetting how to restore the figure back to like a default pose. They always look like they've been folded up into like 4 pieces of 4 times. And then so getting it, and then I've got like the Source Tools plugin thing that you have to download to be able to export from Blender into the SFM format. But when you try and do that, it just throws a hissy fit, because there's a script that you're supposed to type in and run, and the script doesn't work in Blender 2.8. So it's like, well, that's brilliant. So you spend like 2 hours on the tutorial getting to that stage, only to find out that the script that you're supposed to cut and paste doesn't bloody work. And of course it's like, well, I don't know enough about Blender to sort of get myself out of that situation, so I'll pretty much kind of hit a roadblock on that one. And someone's saying, oh, well, you should pay someone else to do it. I'm like, yeah, I haven't got that much money to do that. You know, my Patreon gets $17 a month, and Subscribestar I think is at $60. So, you know, not at a stage where I can bring in extra help just yet, so I'll have to hold off on that and just legacy build. What? So I'm not very familiar with Blender at all. Like, the interface is, there's a lot going on. If you don't know how to use it, there's a lot going on there. Yeah, what's going on there? You can do some weird stuff. Oh, right. No. Thing is, I don't know what version of Blender the script is designed to work in, so, and you know, I'm sure someone genius out there is probably like mastered how to do this, because let's be honest, you only need to do it for like 2 or 3 characters, so you're only going to need to go through the process 2 or 3 times. So I suppose that most people don't really see a point in kind of creating any kind of script. Well, I mean, it's worth a go. There's like a tutorial. Let me see if I can copy and paste a link in the Restream chat. Because it's a massively long guide that my monitor's about to try and turn itself off. Bear with me just a second. Sorry about that. Very squeaky computer chair. Yeah, let me find this guide. That should do it. It's probably tell me, oh, it's not that hard. Right, copied and pasted the link. That's right, yes. Welcome, dead boy. Like, this guy goes into crazy depth about how to do it. But the thing with a guide that long is that if one step goes wrong, the whole thing doesn't work after it. So it's like you have to be really meticulous. I'm tweaking an expression. I was just passing some information onto another viewer. Some flipping weird stuff going on with his face. Yeah, source filmmaker David, yeah. It's let me just, I can't do it on YouTube, because if I start posting links to porn on YouTube, I'm gonna get in all kinds of trouble. But if you look on like all of the main porn sites which allow you to watch, YouTube style sites that allow you to watch porn on the internet, and just do a search on SFM, you will see like buttloads of videos created. There's one guy called, nope, can't remember his name, but there's like some really realistic animations, because what SFM does that Daz and Maya and all those other bits of software don't do. Yeah, yeah, that's the censorship. That's Patreon. They're censoring my brain. What SFM does is it actually has soft body physics in its character models. So if you make a character jump up and down, the wobbly bits jiggle and move about like they're supposed to, whereas in Daz you have to physically animate that yourself. So it's kind of streamlined the workflow. Just makes, and obviously it's quite realistic as well, so you know that's always a win. I think I've gone and given her a bit of a weird Two-Face kind of motif going on here. Harvey Dent, eat your heart out. Let me see if I can remember this guy's name, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get in trouble for saying his name. I mean, he's got a, let me try. can find that. I'll go onto that channel. This is quite bizarre. One misclick and I'm streaming porn onto YouTube, which will go down really well. Cinema 4D. See, I look at that and it's just like the rest in terms of complexity, isn't it? I suppose you just got to pick one and stick with it. You're one of three. .69. ZBrush is amazing bit of software. You need a pen tablet to use it though. You've got to have a pen tablet. Like I try and use it with a mouse and it's so clunky. But you get in there with a proper pen tablet. Oh, it's awesome. Like sculpting is so quick. Right, that's the name of the guy. The name of the guy whose animations I'm impressed by is Self-Drilling SMS. Self-Drilling SMS. There you go. I've typed it into the chat. Like the animations that guy does are kind of like, you know, they're amazing. Just so you know, that squeak isn't my chair. That one is, yeah. But yeah, I'm also trying to pour myself a drink without making too much noise. There's nothing worse than hearing someone gulping and pouring drinks over a live stream. I just punched my microphone, sorry about that. Yeah, the squeaky chair is an issue, but the problem is I'm quite heavy. Not like, well, I don't think I'm fat, but someone else might do, but I weigh 200 and I think it's 270 pounds. I don't know what that is. I'm not very good at converting. It's 122 kilograms. I do go to the gym 3 times a week just to kind of keep roughly in shape. Not that any of you really need to know that, but just trying to justify the fact of my squeaky chair. I think the best description I've ever heard for Daz is that it is an entry level. It's an entry level 3D program because it does most of the heavy lifting for you, which is great. It's great that you know the amount it can do, but because it does so much of the heavy lifting for you, it also does tend to be quite slow at almost everything. That's fair. But yeah, because you don't really need any prior knowledge to use it. You can just jump straight in there, use the default characters if you want, and you know, you can be creating within minutes. I mean, there have been games out there, very popular games on, like, you know, that just use default Victoria and Michael 3 or whatever numbers they were when they were Genesis 3. It does beg the question. I mean, like, I understand the business model that DAS have adopted, and it works for them. But it does kind of, the fact that DAS is supposed to be so user friendly, which is its main selling point, just kind of baffles me all the more. How poor the documentation is. You know, the whole point of DAS is supposed to be making 3D accessible to everyone. So the fact that, you know, really, really simple things are really, really difficult to achieve, and not because they're difficult, but because the documentation doesn't tell you how to do it. You can mimic the physics in animation, because you can do, you know, you can use morphs, you can use deformers, you can use, you know, the bones in the pectoral muscles and stuff to mimic the physics, but it just takes time, which is why I'm kind of interested in Source Filmmaker, because you don't, it takes that step out of it. It makes it a little bit quicker to use. It may be just as slow to render the video out, and the video might not even look that good, but, you know, not having to faff around with the physics of the body does make all the difference. I mean, DAS has got the ability to do pretty much everything that you can do in every other piece of 3D software, but it's knowing how to do it. Yeah, I mean, there are 3D physics, you know, fluid physics engines and stuff that you can put into DAS, but that takes people with a great deal of scripting knowledge, and then again, it doesn't work perfectly right out of the box. You know what I mean? It's not like you can create a glass prop, create a water prop, and just go. You'd have to. It takes a bit of shoehorning to make it work. Yeah, more than likely. Well, they were talking about it, about having physics, because there have been hints about the D-Force engine eventually being an all-encompassing physics engine. You know, not just for doing cloth and hair, but also for doing water and doing, you know, gravity on bodies and things like that. And there is actually one product on the DAS Studio store which does supposedly create, it's a breast product. It's a geographed pair of breasts that you can put on your character. It'll copy the materials from your existing character, and then you can apply a certain amount of gravity and a certain amount of squeezing to the character's breasts, but it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, I don't blame you. Hexagon. It's one of those things that's a really good idea, but after like spending 2 hours building a model and it crashing for the third time and you keep losing all your work, it's just like, yeah, nah, bye. I'll just make do with something else. It just made sense to have a piece of 3D software that you could use to create props and things like that, that was kind of connected to DAZ Studio in a more in-depth way, so you didn't have to worry about there being inconsistencies in the file formats or whatever. Yeah, man, it crashes so much. And it's always when you're doing something really silly and really trivial, like moving a vertex. Like, you select one vertex, and Hexagon crashes, and you could have spent like half an hour building up a room or something like that, and then it crashes, and you're just like, oh, do you know what, sod this. Right, well, I've created 2 expressions. Moving a vortex, yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what the problem is. It thought it was moving a vortex instead of a vertex, and it was trying to calculate the event horizon or something, which caused it to crash. DAZ and Hexagon together do remind me of it's like a group of developers who have all got really good intentions and are all really brilliant at what they do, but when it comes to actually optimizing the software to be able to cope with, for example, applying a 0 expression to a character, the software hangs for like 30 seconds while it thinks. Oh man. See, that's one thing I will never mess around with, is creating hairstyles of my own, just because I don't think I'd be capable of doing it for a start, and also, like you say, if Hexagon crashes and you lose all your work, that can be hours of work. I know you're supposed to save it and all that sort of thing. Of course you do. I mean, I save my work as often as possible, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, she did look a bit like Harvey Dent, didn't she? Yeah, hair is one of those things that I will gladly pay for. I will gladly give a creator who spends time, as long as they're doing it good. Some of the hairstyles that have come out on the DAZ Studio store recently have been a bit kind of like, really? They're supposed to be doing quality control. I wouldn't even start it straight. I mean, like, fair play to you if you managed to create your own styles. Yeah, man. Definitely. Yeah, round of applause for Sean Powers for having 4 hairstyles partially built. He's considerably further into it than I would have been. I just don't have the attention span for it. See, this is the thing that does kind of grind my gears a little bit. This is 0, no morphs applied, hairstyle applied straight out the gate, and I have to deal with this. I like the D-Force hair. D-Force hair is awesome. I use it on as many characters as I possibly can now, just because it, you know, you run the simulation before every render, and you get a naturally kind of laying hair. It's a little bit better. Yeah, that black stuff is annoying. It's the thing is, changing the opacity of the geometry doesn't get rid of it either, so you have to actually physically shrink the bloody thing. And like that I can deal with in Photoshop. That doesn't bother me so much, but that whopping great like alien V on her forehead, you know, that would have looked really weird. And the eyes doing the same thing with the corneas or something. Photoshopping that out is a pain in the bum as well. Where am I looking at outfits? Oops. Let's try that again with the actual character selected. Yeah, do you know what? You just reminded me of what it looks like. You know, I don't know if any of you have played Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2, when Jack's face gets knocked off, spoiler alert, and he's got that vault symbol on his forehead. So this is a thing I was playing with the other day. I uploaded a before and after kind of shot onto the Patreon site, but obviously I know that not everybody's using that, so I'm going to do it now. I'm going to apply a dynamic surface to that, and then we're going to surfaces, simulation. Going to drop friction to 0.2. Density, I think that needs to be like 50. That's going to be 75. I think that's all I need to do in there. If I go into the simulation, turn that off. go with 3 seconds there. Air resistance is going to be 0. Gravity is 1. Bit of side boob, chaps. Yes, bit of side boob. Now, if I give her a pose, any old pose will do. Helps if you select the character. Jesus. Standing. Any old pose will do. So many poses. Yeah, that one will do. See if I got the D-force calculations right. Board now. See how that looks. No, it's still not right. What am I forgetting to do? Stretch damping. Let's try putting that to 0.5. Bucking ratio. I don't know. I can't remember. I'm having a brain fart at the moment as to what does what. So we're just kind of guessing. I think it did what it was supposed to do. It definitely shrunk. Are you guys seeing? I've just realised I haven't actually looked at my stream. Are you guys seeing each other's chat messages appear in the stream? Or are you just watching it on YouTube? Because I have got a chat box supposedly somewhere in my stream. It just doesn't appear to be showing any chat messages. Because the first live stream I did, for some reason, no, I don't think it's actually in stream, is it? I think it's the issue I had last time is the for some reason YouTube didn't record the chat, so people watching the live stream back afterwards could hear me talking and responding to you guys, but obviously didn't have a clue what you guys were actually saying, which yeah, I know it's I'm responding as soon as I see it, but I think there's like a 10-second delay, which is a bit frustrating for you, obviously, because I'm responding to messages that happened 10 seconds ago. Meanwhile, you guys are, you know, you guys have moved on in the conversation. So yeah, what I've done here, because the vest was creating these weird kind of teepees over her nipples, and it was had a weird kind of buckling going on between the breasts. 2 minutes, really? It might be 2 minutes. It could be a while. I don't know, honestly. I obviously when I watch the stream, I'm probably getting it quicker because it's going. It's not. I don't know. Wow. That is a big delay. Let's apply one of our amazing new expressions to her. Let's go with a mildly sad expression. This is where we found out I've saved it wrong and it completely resets her pose, which would be annoying. But as you can see, the D-force settings that I just plopped in have made the vest fit more like an actual vest. Well, yeah, it could be just that I'm a bit special and it takes me a while to read your messages. That's entirely possible. Maybe it's Restream. Next time, because no one seems to be watching this in Picato, what I might do is just record straight from OBS into YouTube and bypass Restream next time I do it and see if that's any quicker, because it has to go through YouTube. Oh no, it did reset her. There we go, look, she's got the mildly sad expression that we created 2 hours ago. Have a good night, man. Sleep well. So she looks mildly sad in a well-fitted vest. So I would consider that expression to be a success. Probably not one I'm going to use that often, but is everybody happy with what I just did in D-Force? I'm trying not to labour the point, but we've got to do something constructive with the with you guys being here to see a stream of. I'd say it's quite a fitting expression given her role in the story thus far. So I'm going to go for like 10 more minutes, chaps, and then I'm going to knock it on the head myself. Thanks, David. So if you've got any burning questions that you want to ask, feel free to chuck them out now. Yeah, that was important to me, Sean, is there's... I was making expressions, but I did 2 and then got completely sidetracked. Sexy blobs, that's the one. Yeah, for going back to what you were just saying, Sean, it's like so many games out there that just have these ridiculously distended boobs, and like, don't get me wrong, I like implants as much as the next guy, and big boobs are sometimes fun, but like, you just get a bit oversaturated. So I wanted to make sure that all my characters had kind of realistic sized proportions. You'll have to write them down, David. Oh, I'll tell you what I can do. I can talk to you very quickly about what videos I've got coming up. For those of you who don't go to my Patreon page to kind of get updates, I've got an eye test on Monday because I've been getting these really bad optical migraines, and I get like the full... When I get a migraine, I get a migraine. I get like, I go blind. I get pins and needles all over my whole body, so I can't feel anything. I puke. It's like, it's a mess. I just turn it to a snotty heap on the floor and basically can't be useful for anything. So I'm having an eye test on Monday, which will hopefully mean that I can spend more time creating videos, because at the moment I have to limit how long I stare at the monitors for. And I think I need reading glasses, because like if I spend like more than a couple of hours staring at the screen, I start to get like my eyes struggle to focus and all that sort of thing. So I honestly don't know. So yeah, so I'm going to hopefully get some glasses that will make me able to look at the screens for longer, and then I'll be able to obviously spend more time creating content for the channel. And I have got it's quite common, I think, from what I've been led to believe. It's not like I'm a freak of nature or anything. I think it's fairly common for people to need glasses to look at a monitor. So yeah, I did throw together a quick list about videos that I'm gonna make. I have recorded some of them, I just need to be able to edit them. So I've got one that's going to be like the golden rules for the Daz Studio store, which is just kind of like a hint as to things to watch out for, products not to waste your money on. I'm gonna stick to my rule at the moment of not naming any content creators specifically, because I don't want to be accused of favouring one particular content creator over another. So I'm just going to sort of give you tips of people to products types to kind of stick with. I'm going to carry on with the interior lighting series, because there's a few more videos I want to create for that. Animations, I'll carry on doing videos for that as well. I'm going to start doing some stuff about the photographic principles and how they kind of tie in with what we do in Daz Studio. And then I'll do some more Lightroom and Photoshop stuff as well, to kind of give people more of a tool, more of a tool set that they can use to kind of create better looking images, or just to tweak what they have. Because even this, I mean, this is a pretty solid, I'm not really rendering this, but it's fairly solid, but there are still things that I would want to tidy up in post-production. I probably want to zoom in and just check that her eyes are good, there's none of them black circles or anything. I'd obviously go and look for any of this. If you look at the shade, the line across her right boob, for example, here you can see the polygons in the vest, so I'd probably have to kind of blur that out a little bit to soften it up. So yeah, that's those are the videos that I'm looking at creating. Hopefully they'll be up in the next few weeks. What else do I need to talk about? Oh, I've got this is, don't take this as me begging or anything like that, because it's not. I've started a GoFundMe for like, it's going to take me about 2 years to save up for an RTX 2080, let alone two of them. So I've started a GoFundMe. I don't expect it to anything to happen, if I'm being honest, because those kind of things I think are a bit off. But there is one. It's linked on my Patreon page. I've started it on the off chance that I'm able to get there, but I'll be honest, I don't imagine that I'm going to get any people pledging any money in regards to that. I think I'm just going to have to save up the money that I make on Patreon and probably Subscribestar to be able to afford it. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, I'll do the animation. I'll carry on with the animation. I haven't touched it since the live stream, so I will carry on with the animation I worked on last week. Well, maybe next week, maybe not. We'll see what happens. I didn't want to do it this week because I'm struggling to look at the monitor for a long period of time. I didn't want to do that because that requires quite a bit of staring at very small. Cash for glasses. I can probably afford a cheap pair of reading glasses if I'm being honest. That I think, you know, I'm on minimum wage, but I think I can probably stretch to buy a pair of, you know, standard supermarket frames for some reading glasses. But yeah, it's going to take me like... The 1070 is okay. Don't get me wrong, it copes. As you can see, I mean, it rendered this... I mean, this is a very basic scene, one character with some clothes on. Isn't a great, very taxing. But for creating content for you guys as much as anything else, if I want to do anything that's vaguely complicated, like, you know, if I had 2 characters in the scene and some background stuff, you guys, if I'm doing it, videoing it, I can edit out the sort of periods of waiting between, you know, while a computer figures out. But if I'm live streaming, it needs to be quick so that you guys aren't sitting there staring at a... Yeah, more is better. You know, so I'm kind of thinking ahead as to being able to do more live streams and stuff, and the 1070 is just not going to cut it when I start doing more complicated stuff. To be honest, I'm amazed that you guys haven't been seeing sort of jittery video and stuff from this, because I have been sort of popping in and out of NVIDIA Iray mode quite a bit and doing sort of D-Force simulations and stuff. Yeah, so 5 more minutes, chaps, and then I'm gonna go to bed and give my eyes a rest. So for those of you who haven't been watching the whole way through, which I imagine is a few people, key points from this stream were: I can't see, I get really bad headaches. If you're going to make expressions for your characters, then have reference materials up. Use Google. Get yourself, like, you can find like contact sheets, but just remember that subtlety is important. You don't want, if you're trying to do a realistic, it's on my Patreon page. It's, well, let me think. Yeah, it's the very first post on the Patreon page at the moment. Because it's the most recent thing I posted. It's called Donations to Upgrade, and then the link in there is to the GoFundMe. I didn't end up doing Kickstarter because Kickstarter don't let you do campaigns specific for like hardware and stuff. They said, oh no, you've got to be using the hardware to create something, and I was like, well, I am YouTube, and they were like, no, that's not good enough. So GoFundMe, you can just do what, you know, you can fund whatever the hell you want. But yeah, so I figured, as well as the 2 RTXs, I'm going to have to buy a new PSU as well, because the one I've got is 1250 watts, and I don't know if that's going to be good enough to handle 2 RTXs, or even one. It struggles with my current setup, and I've only got a 1070 Ti and an i9, but I have got 4 hard drives, so yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, use reference materials for creating your characters, and honestly, if you're using your own characters, it's a good idea to create expressions specifically for them, because you can tweak them, even if you are just using ones that you've downloaded. Tweak them still so that they fit your characters, and then obviously save them specific for your characters, because it just helps make things look a bit more natural. What else did we cover? Subscribestar 18 plus, yeah, that's the adult, subscribestar.adult instead of subscribestar.com. It's picking up. Subscribestar is picking up. More and more people are starting to move over from Patreon. since they've made changes, like I was nagging at them, the Subscribestar guys, I was nagging at them about having a because on Patreon, if you're not a patron, or if there's posts that you're not in the right tier to view, you get a kind of blurred preview, and you didn't used to get that on Subscribestar. So I was nagging at them about it, and I'm not saying it was my suggestion that made them do it, but they were working on it, and now that's been implemented. So now people can see that I am posting content, because before, if you weren't a subscriber, you couldn't see anything other than the public posts. There was no indication that any activity was happening at all, which yeah. I mean, I don't have a strong opinion, considering the trouble I've had with Patreon. I don't have a particularly strong opinion about them from that point of view, just because I figure there's so many extremist lefties these days. I used to consider myself to be a bit of a lefty, but when they started doing that, you know, like all of the Hollywood celebs started screaming about that, the MAGA kid, you know, that guy, that kid, that was like 15-year-old kid who was standing at the Washington Monument, and a Native American guy walked right up to him and got in his face. And someone uploaded doctored footage of it that made it look like the kid was squaring up against this guy, and it turns out he was just stood there kind of not really knowing what to do. All these Hollywood celebs were screaming about him, you know, they were releasing his home address and stuff on the internet and calling for him to be burned alive and all this kind of thing. It's just like, yeah, no, I'm not a lefty, I'm not one of these clowns, seriously. And I remember watching the memorial for, oh Christ, I can't remember her name, famous singer, and Ariana Grande went up to talk, and the pastor put his arm around her, and because she's so tiny, his arm almost went all the way around, and he accidentally kind of touched the side of her boob. And like, there was outrage on Twitter, all these extremist lefties screaming that he should be kicked out of the church and that he groped her, and it's like, the dude clearly was just putting his arm around her, and she's so tiny that his arm went all the way around and nearly went round the front of her again. So it's, you know, it's just like, God, get a grip, guys, come on. And it's just like, oh yeah, I'm not one of those people. Libertarian, that's the one. Yeah, liberalism has changed dramatically. It's because people keep letting these people get away with fart snippers. To me, being offended is a choice. You can choose to be offended, or you can choose to take a deep breath, think about what's been said, and analyse it, and decide whether it's worth getting offended about. It just seems to me that people are far too quick to pretend to be offended about really trivial shit these days. This is kind of sad. But on that note, rather than going into a deeper meaningful about all of that sort of thing, I am going to go. Thanks very much for coming along, guys. You guys are awesome as always. Hopefully I'll do another one of these next week. And we'll do something a bit more interesting. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next week, and I'll upload videos as soon as I get my eyesight back. Take it easy, guys. Sleep well and all that.